Is Microsoft Unified Support busting your IT budget? Well, you're not alone. US Cloud is the global leader in third-party Microsoft enterprise support, and they're helping enterprises slash cost by 30 to 50% versus Microsoft Unified, all while getting faster response times from domestic engineers. No offshoring, no long waits, just expert support you can count on 24/7, 365. Trusted by 50 of the Fortune 500 companies and offering senior-level engineers with an average of 14 years experience with Microsoft technologies, US Cloud is a smarter alternative for premium Microsoft support without the premium price. Ready to make the switch? Book a call at uscloud.com to get started today. That's uscloud.com.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. Apologize to those of you who are used to me getting the show out first thing in the morning in your inbox, in your podcast feeder, out in YouTube on a Sunday morning. Had a lot going on this weekend, so get this one out just a little later on a Sunday morning, but apologize for that. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody who wanted to get drafted in the NFL this weekend got drafted. Hopefully those of you that didn't want to get drafted, your team picked the best player you could possibly get, future Hall of Famers and all those sorts of things. So anyways, hope everybody's doing well. Spring is moving along very quickly. We are almost into May. Hard to believe the year is that far along. But anyways, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is, there's a lot of buzz around AI agents. I know we've talked about it a little bit on the show. We've had a number of shows here recently where we kind of dove into it. And, as certain things are starting to solidify, because we've already seen people building AI capable things in all sorts of different languages. There's lots of different frameworks for building agents. But we're now starting to see some things evolve, even just over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months. Things like MCP, Model Context Protocol. Google just came out with something called A to A, which is another model to tools, agent to tools, agent to agent protocol for doing this. So we're seeing a lot going on from a technology in this space. And I got to thinking about it. I was reading a bunch of different articles and different things, and not all of them technical, some of them just kind of architectural and so forth. And it got me thinking about AI agents. And so what I did was, in sort of short form to help me kind of think about, what's going on in this space, what are the things that companies and end users are going to have to be thinking about. I kind of made up a 5 topics, 5 questions that I'm thinking about with AI agents, and I tried to put them in kind of classic newspaper writing. For those of you kids, newspapers were things that used to come to your house with all the news. Now it's just called the internet. But kind of classic, who, what, why, who, what, where, when, and how. Sort of walking through these things. And so what I thought I would do is just kind of go through those, think through some of the things that are going on with this. This isn't necessarily like a have all the answers type of things, but it is as we are starting to create things that interact with other things in ways in which, we use them to either augment or, replace or create new experiences that are supposed to look like humans doing certain types of work. It got me thinking about, how are we going to kind of walk through these things? How are we going to kind of deal with them? What things have to live around them to be able to provide protections and guardrails and all those sort of things. So anyways, I thought I'd kind of walk through some of those today. This won't be a real long show, just kind of, a set of links that I found recently that I thought were sort of interesting, as well as just some questions that I'm starting to ask myself, and would love to kind of hear people's feedback. If you're beginning to kind of go down the agent path, what are you doing with it? What have you learned? What's working well? What's not working well? All those sorts of things. Feel free to shoot us a note, show@thecloudcast.net. We're always available there. Or if you want to hit us up on one of the social media channels, you can hit us up there as well. All the links are at the bottom of the show notes. So first one I had is what I put under who. And what that one, my question is, or my kind of topic I'm thinking about is, how is an AI agent represented in the context of a person or a group or an organization? Like, how are we going to think about this thing, which is going to take autonomous actions? It's going to, do research. It's going to ask questions. It's going to get back information. It's going to do further sort of prompt engineering and so forth. Do we think about that as a person? Do we think about that as a group? Do we think about that as an organization? And the reason I mention all those things is, that's going to get us into stuff around, things like authentication or authorization, around permissions, around the output of it, kind of attributing that back to something or someone. And I'm curious, what the industry is going to start doing in terms of, are we going to have agents that look, as if they're sort of individuals, or are we going to have agents that look as if they are a group? Are we going to see in situations in which maybe an agent begins to create some things and then the output of that gets sort of fed up the chain to a, kind of a group of agents or something like that? So, and this is where I think I'm thinking about it very hierarchically in terms of the way that group, that people organize themselves within companies and so forth. And I'm wondering, like, is that going to be a good way of thinking about this, or is that going to be sort of an old way of thinking about it, that, there is a completely new way of thinking about these things? So anyways, that's the first thing that kind of came to mind, is in terms of who is, do we think about this as if it is, a pseudo individual, a digital individual, or is there a very different way to sort of think about what an agent actually is? Second thing I had on my list sort of falls in the what category, is how will we audit agent created data or content, right? Will we need it? Will we need to do things like labeling certain content as agent, created? And the reason I'm kind of going down this path is, as we think about more and more things that are being created as a result of these agents going off and doing whatever they're doing, reasoning, trying to do certain tasks, chaining things together, how will we sort of attribute that to something? Right. So, for example, if I read an article on the internet, for the most part, it's got something attributed to it. This was the author. This was the group that wrote this. Maybe you can figure out if it's a grant or some academic paper, like how was it funded? Those types of things. And I'm wondering, will we need to, in order to help people have a sense of trust or have a sense of understanding of the information, will we need to, sort of attribute it to something? Right. There's plenty of stuff on the internet that's just kind of randomly out there. And again, maybe a lot of that's bots as it is today. But, especially if we think about, hey, the thing that was written, it may come out as an opinion, but it may try to present itself as factual. Is it 100% hallucination free? Is it 90% hallucination free? I just think about as we create things, especially in a business context in which other people might rely upon it. How do we go about attributing it to where it came from, as opposed to it just becomes something that goes into something else, right? So, even if it's just simple as the way we do attributes when we write reports, this section was written by this group, or this is the source of the information, so that if you want to, sort of validate it, it's there, right? So will we do that? And again, this sort of goes back to the first question of, like, how will we attribute that? Does that get attributed to sort of a pseudo individual type of user? Does it become a person? Does it become a group? Does it become an organization? And I think there's going to be, certain areas in which that needs to be identified, or at least labeled, in order for people to have trust in it, to be able to use it as a building block for something else, so on and so forth. Okay. Third thing I had on my list, and I think I got these who, what, where, when, and who, what. I don't have a where. I'm not going to worry about the where, because I think the where is it's the internet. Third one I had on my list was why. And I guess my question is, why we choose an agent as the implementation over another form of working on a problem, right? So, we're beginning to see some things come along, and I'll put some links in the show notes. We're seeing certain companies, sort of forward-looking companies, who are saying, kind of top-down edict, memo, whatever it might be, kind of pushing the company to say, look, we need to be more aggressive in terms of how we're using AI. And I know there's one, it's either from Airbnb or Spotify. I'll have to look it up. I'll get the link to it, put it in the show notes, where essentially their manager said, hey, we are not going to hire any new people, or at least I'm going to put a criteria on any hiring of new people until you've identified that you can't sort of work through this with AI in some way, shape, or form, right? So in essence, saying we're not going to hire another net new person until you've kind of proven that the thing the person would do is beyond the scope of what you could do with an AI agent or a companion or something with you, right? And I think it's going to be very interesting to sort of kind of go through that, because that's the type of thinking that I think does permeate a lot of leadership sort of thinking around stuff. Is how do we go about doing this? How do we take advantage of it? Are there benefits to having more agents than people, or those sorts of things? But I'll be very interested to sort of understand the criteria that people have, or companies have, or groups have for when they decide that the problem scope should be sort of immediately looked at from an engaging AI versus again sort of an augmenting type of thing. So again, don't think about this as the thing I talked about last week, which is sort of augment versus replace, but this is more like augment or additive, right? So add an agent as opposed to adding a person, right? So not talking about replacing a person, but we're talking about adding, being additive to it. So I'll be very interested to see some things get written about, why companies chose, or when companies chose to bring an agent into the fold, right? What was the thought process? Are there certain tasks that just sort of automatically go into that area? Are there certain things that are kind of gray? So that I'll be very, very interested to see where that goes. Next one I had on my list is what I'll call when. I don't know if I got these in order, but when. And I was thinking about this more and more because, as we think about agents, the number of tasks that you could start having, and I'm starting to see these little write-ups about, companies who have, 2 or 3 people and 40 agents doing things. And again, some of those I wonder if they're actually valid or not, if they're just sort of clickbait types of things. But, in theory, agents are nothing more than just computer systems, and they don't need sleep, they don't need food, they just need power and compute and internet connections. The number that you could have working on certain tasks could be a very large number, right? And also, depending on how we identify them as, people, group, organization, whatever they might be, it feels like there could be a lot of granularity types of things and permissions things that don't necessarily align with, that human way of thinking about stuff. And again, this is me trying to go through and being like, I'm thinking about these as, again, either augment, replace, or additive to humans, but I don't know that that's necessarily the right way of doing that. I mean, I'm kind of trying to explore that. But I think about that in the context of our authorization systems is, how are they going to, are they going to be capable enough to do this? Because a lot of our authorization systems sort of authorize people to do certain things. They get grouped into certain things. And then we let other access lists and permission lists and firewalls and all sorts of things kind of determine what a human can do, what actions can they take based on this, login criteria, this ID, that type of thing. And, I know we've had some things on the show. I know we talked to the folks at auth about this. But I do think it's going to be very interesting to sort of see what has to evolve from the perspective of AI agents and how granular they get or how broad they get as to, are the current authorization systems or, ID management systems or whatever it might be, are they up to speed as to, what's going to be needed for this? And, where are going to be those places where systems can either get exploited, or maybe there's so much going on in terms of agent-to-agent communication or agent-to-service or agent-to-tools, whatever that might be, that we overwhelm the systems and we're going to need something that scales better, right? So I do wonder if, the systems we have in place today or some of the technology that's pretty prevalent today will be viable, or whether or not we're going to need something that is very, very different. Just because, again, I think we think about this, or maybe it's just me thinking about this. We think about it in terms of, kind of like people, but I don't know that we've understood sort of the layers that agents could potentially create in terms of, new capabilities that we don't necessarily map very well to our authentication systems. And maybe we'll dive into this with Brandon a little bit, because he'll be on Cloud News of the Month this month, and that's sort of one of his areas of specialty is ID stuff. And the last one I had is I'm going to be very interested in when we have agents that are focused on different things, right? And we've already seen certain things happen, right? We've seen chatbots and we've seen co-pilots and we've seen things that sort of float around what an agent could sort of mean. Will we have agents that are kind of specialized? And I assume the answer to this is yes, absolutely. We'll have agents that are specialized. But I'll be very interested to see what happens when we have agents who are specialized in human interacting type of things, i.e., and maybe this will be the dividing line. Maybe those will be more chatbot type of things. But I can imagine, the agents, again, even if they're just doing something like customer service, creating agents that have a level of empathy and understanding of, what do we want our experience to be with humans versus the things that are going to be, agent to agent or agent to system, service type of things in which we're trying to drive a certain level of efficiency or sort of deterministicness to the end result. And I'll be very interested to see, how those two sort of different characteristics, right? An agent talking to another computing service versus an agent interacting with a human being or a set of humans, how they're able to be tuned, adjusted, taught about the concepts of, this is the brand, this is the experience we want to try and have versus I need you to get me the very best answer with the least amount of, risk or the greatest probability of success, in a computer to computer type of communication. So anyways, that was the last one I sort of had on my list in terms of I'll be very interested to see how that evolves, right? How it plays itself out in terms of, how will we understand those things in terms of framework? Will those sort of be binary types of questions like, hey, this is a human, so these are the 3 or 4 core things you want to sort of focus the agent around. This is going to be non-human. You're going to focus on these types of things. Like, are we going to be able to make it simple enough that it can be kind of a checkbox of, empathy, friendliness, patience, all those sorts of things versus, deterministic, win at all costs, get the lowest answer, get the best outcome, all those types of things. Like, I'll be interested to see how that goes along. So anyways, I think those are my 5 things that I had. How will we represent them? How will we audit them? How will we determine when to use one versus the other? What are our auth systems going to look like? And then how will we build kind of fit for purpose types of concepts around these agents? So anyways, just a few thoughts I had. Be curious what types of things y'all are thinking about in terms of AI agents, whether it's at a technology level or at a system level or, kind of an interaction level. So anyways, with that, I'll wrap it up. Again, sort of a short show, just a few things I've been thinking about. I put some links in the show notes that you can read a little bit more about all these things that have kind of been on my mind lately. But with that, I'll wrap it up. Thank you all for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. Hope your spring is going well. Hope things are getting warmer. If you have questions, again, feel free to shoot us an email at show@thecloudcast.net. Hit us up on any of the social channels that we've got at the link at the bottom of the show notes. With that, I'll wrap it up. Another Cloud News of the Month coming here pretty briefly. Those always are, very, very popular. People love those. So got that coming up soon. And with that, I'll wrap it up. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.